Hi everyone, I'm Lillian.
And I'm Felipe.
And we are the Postmodern family.
We are Americans living in the UK, living a traditional life.
We make 3 new videos every week, so we encourage you to subscribe to our channel.
Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and the Facebook.
Today we are going to react to The Darkest Hour.
We're going to react to The Darkest Hour. It isn't because it recently came out in theaters. Clearly it's been out for a number of years now. I think 2 years maybe, or 3 years. I can't remember.
I think only 1 year, right?
So Gary Oldman won the Academy, I think, last year, which meant I think the movie would have come out a year before.
So it's been about 2 years?
It's been about 2 years, probably. We own it on Amazon Prime.
Is it The Darkest Hour or Darkest Hour?
I think we add the to things that don't have the. We have the habit of
like
doing
Postmodern Family. We're actually just Postmodern Family. Most of our ads are, but then we call ourselves the Postmodern.
Yeah, but it's like Bodyguard.
The Bodyguard.
The Bodyguard.
Oh yes, the one with Whitney Houston.
Or
what was that? Kevin Costner.
HMS Victory.
It's not the HMS Victory.
No.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I think it's an Americanism. Get used
I don't
to
think
it.
so. I think it's us. We watched Darkest Hour because we were in the mood to see something great about British history.
Yeah.
So we popped it in and we watched it.
I'm also a huge fan of Gary Oldman. He's in one of my favorite films called The Fifth Element, which Felipe thinks is the most ridiculous movie ever.
Jean-Baptiste Emmanuel Zord. It's nice to see you again, Father.
It's all right.
But I really love Gary Oldman, and I was really excited to see how he would portray Winston Churchill. Clearly, Winston Churchill has been portrayed by so many famous actors. It's like one of those roles that you just have to be able to play.
Yeah.
And I think for him, it was a great honor because he had spent so much time in America making American movies. To be back making British film, I think was good for him. He said that himself, I think, in one of the interviews. What an honor it was for him to be back to play that role. He plays the American accent quite well, right? You probably didn't know he was British.
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good man.
Okay, so.
Yeah, it's not The Darkest Hour.
Let them see your true qualities.
My poor judgment.
Your sense of humour.
Ho, ho, ho.
Your Majesty.
Mr. Churchill, I invite you to take up the position of Prime Minister. He's an actor in love with the sound of his own voice.
You need to reply to the Lord Privy's seal.
I am sealed in the privy. I can only deal with one shit at a time.
A bottle of champagne for lunch, another one at dinner.
Here's to not buggering it up.
We are looking at the collapse of Western Europe in the next few days.
You ask what is our aim? Victory at all costs.
You're suggesting we're somehow winning. We're not.
Is it true we're in full retreat?
All our forces are now in Dunkirk, where we cannot reach them.
They're pushing us into the sea.
There is the question of peace talks between ourselves and Germany.
Europe is still...
Europe is lost.
The tyrants.
You have the full weight of the world on your shoulders.
How many men will survive?
Go to the people. Tell them the truth.
We must rouse to an heroic resistance.
There's nothing patriotic in fighting to the end. Now is the time to negotiate.
When will the lesson be learned? You cannot reason with a tiger when your head is in its mouth! I take full responsibility.
Really?
Really? Yes, sir! It is the reason I sit in this chair!
Be yourself.
Myself. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender! For without victory, there can be no survival.
So is that
That was
UK
when it came
dates?
out.
So
January the 12th,
about a year and a few months ago then.
Yeah, so just a year, just over a year.
So I would say there's a number of reflections I have on this movie. But, and I don't know if you guys have seen our previous video on Winston Churchill. One of the reflections there was, I don't quite understand how British people cannot be a fan of Winston Churchill. And so then there were a couple comments responding, well, if you see the polls and people take polls and they ask who's the most famous or most best Brit in history, Winston Churchill always ends up being up there. But as with all these figures from before, their legacy is people are attempting to destroy their legacy. So the chief reflection that I have from this movie is how, in the context of today, where they are attempting to destroy the legacy of great men, a movie like this would come out. But it warms my heart that there are still people who would make a movie like this to uphold the greatness of a man who's being backbitten and trying to be torn down today. One of the concurrent ongoing themes in our videos when I reflect on British versus American mindsets is this whole idea of American optimism and British pessimism. And then in the comments you get all the sort of cynical rubbish comments about, well, Americans live in a dream but we live awake, or they might hope for something that's unreal but we subscribe to what's real.
Yeah,
so there's always this sort of, in the comments and people reflecting that a distinct thing of Britishness is to be realist and pessimistic.
Which is an excuse to be pessimistic, really.
Because the civilization is old, and so we've seen everything.
To be ashamed of, they say.
We've seen everything under the sun. So when you think there's a chance for hope and success, we know from episode after episode in history that this is not going to end well, etc., etc.
There was a recent comment who said the reason why British people aren't very patriotic is that there's nothing very much to be proud of. It's hard to be proud of a country that has so much shame in its past, is what the comment was. And
but let's not detract from the point. So the point here is that Winston Churchill is portrayed as optimistic to the end, and he's old. And so I get it that sometimes when men grow old, women grow old, they become cynical and pessimistic. Life's passed them by. They didn't do anything great. But he had a very checkered record by that time in his career, and yet optimism is the essential characteristic of his character, at least in the movie. It's untrue that a distinctive characteristic of being British is pessimism. I think if you see men like Winston Churchill and other men in the history of the country, they have a can-do, indomitable spirit of optimism. And it's a real shame that people would think that part of the British identity is to be pessimistic. And you guys ought to scrub yourself clean of that feature if you think that's what belongs
you're telling them what they ought
Britishness.
To do.
Well, I'm just telling them be more like their great men.
But that's because you think he's great. But lots of, like you said, there are people who don't think he's great. They just think he was a drunkard or obsessed with his own voice, like all of these opposition voices you hear in this trailer.
There's so many thoughts, so many reflections.
Can I say something now?
Not yet. So then Alexander the Great, this is paraphrasing, he said that I much more fear an army of lambs led by a single lion than an army of lions led by a lamb. And so that essentially means if you have a nation of humble people that will follow someone, and if that someone is a lion, then that that nation is unstoppable, that people are unconquerable. And so it made me think, so when in the movie, when Winston Churchill goes into the people, into the underground and talks to the man on the street, and the man on the street is sort of saying, you know, is dying for leadership to defend the country. They want to stand behind someone who will lead them into battle. And so I think it epitomizes that sort of Britishness of, we talked in previous videos about how they submit to their institutions and are willing to, let's say, give a lot of credence to what a doctor says in the NHS, what a constable will say about the law, what a judge will pass down. And it's both a virtue and a vice at the same time. A nation that is full of lions is unmanageable. But a nation full of lambs, when the right lion comes to the scene, it's unstoppable. So I think it's to your virtue and to your demise, that feature.
We watched this film shortly after we watched Dunkirk. So first we had watched Dunkirk, and I was just blown away by that. I loved that. And then after that, we watched The Darkest Hour, and it just continued to solidify for me the amazing. I mean, clearly everyone knows Winston Churchill was known for the power of his words. He's an excellent orator, and for him to use his words to build fire in the soldiers and the people and support and national pride and what is it called when they stand together? Solidarity. I don't know exactly if that's what it means, but pulling together of a nation to hold off this monstrous child. He was describing Hitler. I love that history is being taught to me using film, because I didn't enjoy learning history growing up, but it definitely helps me understand the nation, I think, even though we've really gone past, we're post his era, obviously. And I think culturally this country is a bunch of lambs again with another lamb for the leader. The sheep in sheepskin, as he described. The sheep in
sheep's clothing.
Yes.
Is very apt.
Yes. That was his description of Attlee, I think.
I think so, yeah.
But what I really loved about this, I love British film. Like, I think that the way they film it, it's so artistically done. It's also, unlike American films, it pretends that the viewer is smart and gets it. Like, it doesn't feed the viewer like every little detail. You kind of have to fill in the dots. And whereas American films, a lot of them are like, they have to lay it out for you. So it feels a little bit like predictable and kind of like they're talking down to me, like, oh, come on. So here, I love they tie in so many beautiful theatrical cinematography, like shots, and then ties it in with the audio. I mean, we are constantly striving to improve our video editing, like our vlogging and things like that, how to tell a story. And I thought this film was done so beautifully. And then in combination with Gary Oldman, one of my favorite actors of all time, he did a phenomenal job, even though physically he looks nothing like Winston Churchill.
Well, it depends.
Well, and
what from what you've seen him being played by other actors, or
no, from the
statue
paintings and stuff. Yeah, the paintings and the statues. He's just too thin of a frame. Like, they try to put weight on him and all this, but he's not a big man. He doesn't move like a big man. And Winston Churchill was a round man. So that's the one thing about him. But clearly he has the vigor inside him to perform the way that I think Winnie would have been angry about things. It was the vigor that he'd perform with was excellent. So I
think this is definitely one of my favorite movies of the 2000s. I think, or maybe all time. I don't know, but it's just so well done.
Oh, you still love
Gladiator is still my top. But speaking of the classical era, there's a really awesome scene in this, which really just tickled my heart. Not tickled, but warmed my heart. Is when he's in the underground, and after he's talked to the people, and he starts quoting an episode from the defense of the Roman Republic. So the Republic is being invaded, and they're at their sort of their Alamo point, and there's one bridge into the city over the Tiber, and they're defending the bridge from the invasion. And this one Roman officer says, so there's 3 guys left on the bridge who tell the rest of the army, go into the city and destroy the bridge. We'll stay here and make sure they can't cross it. And so then this guy Horatio says, you two go back. I'll stay here to the end. And he sends them back. And so he stands his ground on this bridge, Horatio. And then when all the soldiers have cleared the bridge, they bring it down, and he strips off his armor and jumps into the Tiber and then swims into the city and survives. And so it's this great sort of story that people used to tell their kids about Horatio and Horatio's spears. It depicted in paintings and antiquity. So Winston is in the underground, and he starts telling the story, and some other guy finishes it.
For the ashes of his fathers and the temples of his gods.
On the underground. And it's not some like public school boy who finishes it. It's a commoner, what looked to me like a commoner at least. And he just finishes the story, which to me was like, it seems like everyone knew the story. In that 1940s, mid-20th century, everyone knew that story. But if you go today into the underground and you talk about Horatio and his defense of Rome on the bridge, people would not, I suspect, I could be mistaken, but I suspect people would not know.
Education, like I say, has changed completely. It's not about teaching the virtues anymore. It's just teaching the subjects. And whereas, anyway. So that was lovely. And then he starts crying. Yeah. Which I thought was amazing because, like, you know, it's just to see a prime minister show that kind of level of emotion, the love for his people. Yeah. To see his nation.
And what was it? A little girl that said, "Are you crying?" Yeah. I can't remember.
Yeah. And he says, "Yes."
Yeah. I blub a lot. The modern society seems to have lost the ability to judge a man within the confines of his time. So all the accusations, so it's like taking Julius Caesar and saying, well, he was a racist because he had slaves. And so, whereas what we should be doing is understanding what was considered baseline normal in that time and seeing where that individual stood relative to that baseline normal. And this is the crime that people are committing against so many people in history.
In an effort, down the statues.
Yeah, in an effort to basically, when a people lose their history, they cease to exist. So enemies of the West know darn well that if they destroy the Washingtons, the Jeffersons, the Churchills of a people, then those people will be rudderless. And that's the opportunity to then swoop in and refashion them in some other image. So it's really sad and outrageous that people destroy history like that. And you should know better. Everyone should know better that you don't judge a man by today's standards. So that's my last.
So how do you feel like they're judging him by today's standards?
Well, so he made some comments about people in India that were disparaging. So they call him racist for doing that. He made some comments about Muslims. And so they disparage him on that. I think if you see this movie and you see how he treats his secretary, they might say, well, he was sexist. Right. They'll judge him for that.
That reminds me. So the way that in the beginning, near the beginning, where his family is toasting to him that he's become prime minister, and his wife gives the speech that says, look, I always knew I was going to be second to the public. And the children also kind of grew up. The daughters felt
they came to terms with that.
Yes. Yeah. But here's the fruit of their efforts. Yeah. Here's the reward for the small sacrifice they made, is what she said. And I think to modern ears,
I think she was downplaying the sacrifice.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I think to modern ears, they were like, wow, this woman is bowing to this masochistic, like,
misogynistic.
Misogynistic.
Not masochistic.
that she was compliant.
She was complicit with his misogyny.
Yes.
She had some internalized misogyny of her own, as they would say.
But I would like to say that I'm sure they had lots of rough times in their marriage, but that I think she behaved with such virtue to support this. Because, okay, let me just talk to you ladies out there, you women. Men are risk takers. Good, strong men are risk takers because they have the guts to do what they see, that they envision. And to lots of women like myself, I can't see that. Like, I just don't get it. And a lot of women today will downplay their husbands and their dreams and be like, look, you just can't do that. Like, we don't have the money for that, or you're blah, blah, blah. And I think that when you have a woman like Winston Churchill's wife who actually supported him and didn't hopefully complain too much about his dedication to the public, you get a reward. Like, this man was just a great man. I mean, if we didn't have a Winston Churchill at this time, we would probably be sitting in the middle of, I don't know, Germany, New Germany.
So she could very well take it upon herself as I contributed to the defense of the West by propping up and supporting my husband.
Yeah. So it's very important, wives out there, that you do come to terms with how you play a role in your husband's success. I know it's maybe not, you don't consider it your success, but it is your success, as we just this example of Winston Churchill. So take it upon yourselves, I think, to...
Would they say, but I could be that Winston Churchill?
They might say that, but I would say it's very, very rare to find that in women. I mean, yeah, you're going to get women who are like that,
outliers,
tigers,
yeah.
But a lot of women are just naturally more nurturing, and we would rather be in a safe, secure place with our families and not just out like fighting someone with your bare hands. I don't think I would do that. But yeah, I'm sure there are a lot of women out there. I'm not saying that the women who desire and do that really well are bad or shouldn't. They might do that very well, and they should do that. If they're built like that, they have the mind for it. But a lot of women are pretending, and I would say don't pretend. Don't think I can be like my husband because I'm in a competition with him, when you have to work a lot harder to have that mindset. Thanks so much for watching this video. We hope you enjoyed it. Leave a comment below. Let us know if you've watched this film and if you like it. And also give us more suggestions on what we could react to.
If you like the content we create, you can become a patron at patreon.com/thepostmodernfamily. Or you can also buy t-shirts. We have some t-shirts at teespring.com/store/the-postmodern-family.
Thanks for watching. Bye.